Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast. My name is Mo, and I'll be sitting in the host chair today. We are talking about identity and influence. I'm here today with my good buddy, Dr. Lem Usita. Dr. Lem, what up?
Yes, sir. Always a great time to be with you. Man, I'm really looking forward to having this conversation and talking about this topic. So, yeah, man, let's get into it.
Today, we're talking about leadership lesson number 30, creating content as leadership. That might be something that people are thinking about a ton today, but Dr. Lem, they weren't thinking about creating content 15 years ago the way that you were when you wrote this. Why don't you take us through that?
I was thinking through when I wrote this, and it was about around 15 years ago, and I was consuming a ton of content, and I was like, man, if content is influence, because like you have all these content creators that are now called influencers, and so I wrote this before being an influencer was a thing. um then if you can influence people just with your content, then you're leading.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when people ask, as soon as they tell them that I have a podcast on YouTube, they say, "Oh, you're an influencer." I said, I'm not an influencer. I will never be an influencer.
But
I
I'm a
want to
leader.
be I want to be a person of influence. Why do you think that content creation is one of the most overlooked forms of leadership?
Yeah, I don't think people connect the idea of content with leadership, but throughout history, when if you had the information, if you had the content, you could lead. Like it was people in high positions that would have the information, right? It was people that had books that had the information. When the printing press was created hundreds of years ago, it changed influence. And if you were able to publish something, you could influence the people that were reading your stuff. So we don't necessarily, I don't think we necessarily think about content as leadership, but these days with the ubiquity of the internet and just with information out there, content is influence, and this is the Identity and Influence podcast. If you think about it, what we're doing right now is creating content, and what we want to do is influence people with our content, so it's leadership.
Yeah, I think back to, medieval times, even
Yeah.
before that,
Yeah.
literacy was power. Knowing how to
Exactly.
read, knowing how to write.
Exactly.
Those who had the content, those who had the information had the power.
Yeah.
And knowledge
Exactly.
is power, a lot of people say. And
Yeah.
obviously, now it's applied knowledge is power. In what ways have you seen content creators act as leaders, even if they don't hold traditional leadership titles?
Man, there are a ton of stories where influencers and content creation has changed the landscape. And I think you nailed it by saying that people don't see it as leadership because it isn't the traditional model. But don't misunderstand it. Content creation these days is what leads. Recently, I listened to the story of New Balance. When we were growing up, New Balance was not the shoe. You know what I'm saying? I mean, New Balance, like, it was like a whatever shoe.
Absolutely.
It was 70% on discounts so that you can discount the shoes, and then 30% on marketing. Then a new guy came in and he flipped it, and he spent 70% on marketing specifically to influencers, and the discounts were came out of that 30%. And what it did for New Balance, like a nothing shoe like years ago, like it became the shoe. It was like the dad shoe, and then all of a sudden, like influencers got a hold of it, and now people are buying it.
Totally.
Like it's like a shoe, and like I mean, the other example that I can think of, I remember this particular influencer created an advertising marketing thing for a drink that didn't exist. They created a fake marketing scheme and a fake advertising marketing like program. They put it out there on the interwebs, and then Budweiser picked it up and said, "Hey, let's actually make this." And so they made the actual product like after the marketing happened. And so if you think about it, there are a lot of influencers that are shaping the way that we think, shaping the things that we buy, shaping, our understanding of what it means to be cool. Do you remember a couple of years ago, Payless bought a retail space at Third Street Promenade in Santa Monica? They called it something different. They marketed it and they jacked up the prices.
Yep.
And all And then they invited influencers to the thing, and they were like, the quality
I
of this
remember that.
thing, like their Payless
They all
shoes,
got
but
duped.
they all got duped through the marketing. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, remember Champion shoes were what you bought at Payless, and then influencers got a hold of it, and then all of a sudden Champion shoes became like a
I
I mean,
do.
it's insane. But it shows you that like if you can create the content, especially with influencers, and it takes off, all of a sudden this really cheap shoe can become something much bigger than it is, and you can influence people's decisions to buy. It also, I think, highlights people's need to be cool. You know what I'm saying? And if you start thinking, there was this documentary years ago called The Merchants of Cool. And what they would do is they would look at the things that the innovators would wear and do with clothing, and then they would take it and then they would market it to the masses. And once you market it to the masses, it ceases to become cool, right? But it's just those influencers, those innovators, those weird people, if you will, like when they have an audience and you know, they promote a thing, like it takes off. That's why like the big time influencers get paid millions of dollars for one stinking post because the return on investment of that is pretty insane. But yeah, don't get it twisted. Content creation these days is leadership.
Yeah, when you think of New Balance now, you think of Jack Harlow,
Right,
2022. You think of
right.
Jaden Smith. You think of
Mhm.
Anime the Rapper. You think of Shohei Ohtani.
Mhm.
These are the influencers who are now wearing these brands. And
Yeah,
you're right. It's all about marketing. And so it's the way that your content is put out there that
yeah,
matters.
yeah,
That actually brings me to my next question. You mentioned in the article that content creation can shape thoughts, which is exactly what we've been talking about.
yeah.
It can inspire action, it can guide people. So, how have you personally seen that play out in your own content journey?
Yeah, if you do any looking at and listening to what content creators are saying, these days they're saying that like likes on your post and views on your YouTube videos are vanity metrics, right? They don't really mean anything. But it's crazy to me how the algorithm can really shape identities these days.
Yes.
And I can write something or create something and share it, and thousands of people will see it. And here's the deal, I don't know a lot of these people. I don't even know if thousands of, and my posts don't necessarily get thousands of views all the time, but the possibility is there. And it has gotten thousands of views. And then think behind the views and the likes that, people call vanity metrics is I will then have conversations with people that viewed my content, like in real life, face to face situations, and they will tell me about the influence that that content had on them, how they think differently now because they viewed that content. And so, we might call it vanity metrics, and in some sense, it might be a vanity metric, but yeah, these days you can have real influence with the content that you're creating. So, yeah, I've seen it play out in my own content journey.
I remember when I was a kid, Charles Barkley got a lot of flack because he was the bad boy
Yeah.
of basketball in the NBA. And somebody asked him one time about being a role model, and he said, I'm not trying to be a role model.
Right.
And some people bought that, and other people said, yeah, but come on, dude, you've got all these little kids that are looking at you. What responsibilities come with the influence that content creators hold in today's world over today's kids, over the things that are becoming cool and not cool?
Yeah, just yesterday, I was listening to this. I think it was a podcast, but I watched it on YouTube. And it was the difference between how millennials use social media and what's happening with Gen Zers. And this particular person was talking about when millennials were using social media, they were just kind of using it to connect with people and kind of supplement what was happening in the real world, right? So they were connecting and they were getting online and they were doing all kinds of things, just to kind of supplement what was happening in the real world lives. And then with Gen Zers, though, the algorithm has kind of shaped the kind of content that you watch and you view. And so these days, if you're looking for a thing, if you watch a couple of videos on leadership, your feed will be a lot of leadership stuff. And then the algorithm feeds you the things that you want to watch. And so I think, man, there's a ton of responsibility that comes with creating content and the influence that you have, like your Charles Barkley story, like you're
Yeah,
just going to influence people. I think you can get caught up in the vanity of it. Like I've seen people like just take a look at their views and their likes, and then they build their identity and their sense of worth and value. There's a lot of research that comes from young women, adolescent teenage girls, like shaping and finding their sense of identity and self value and worth
right.
by the number of likes that a post will get. And if it doesn't get an X number of posts, they'll delete it, and then they'll be depressed about that because their identities are wrapped up in this social media content creation thing. I think you can also get trapped into thinking that this content creation is your life, that this is your reality. It definitely
Right.
can shape your identity. And I've seen and you hear stories of content creators like their whole world revolves around the content that they create, right? And so like they're living for the content as opposed to living their lives and sharing the content out of their lives. Like there are people that aspire to be content creators, and I think you can just get trapped into the algorithm. I think you can just get trapped into the reality that this is my whole world. And so that's a huge responsibility, and it's a huge danger. There's a lot of mental health issues that spring out of not handling your content creation or even just the content that you consume wisely. And so like yeah, content really gets into the depths of your soul. It really gets into the identity formation, and it's a powerful thing. So what we're doing is we're wanting to talk about the influence that we can have in a positive light, but there is a dark side to this content creation. It can definitely influence you in a dark spaces for sure.
How should leaders think about long-term impact of the things that they post, the things that they write, the things that they record?
So this taps into a lot of my research. When you go onto social media, the things that you do on the social media shape you because you're consuming social media, but then you're also projecting your identity onto social media. And so like when I look at someone's social media feed, like I can kind of see, well, I'm going to use a verse here. Luke 6 talks about how like out of the good things that a man stores in his heart comes out good things, and out of the evil that a man stores in his heart comes out evil things, and out of the abundance of the heart you post on social media. And so the thing that you post on social media is kind of a direct mirror or direct reflection into what's happening inside of you. And whether you're telling the truth or you're telling a lie, like that tells me something about who you are. And I might not know whether it's a truth or a lie, but taking a look at it reveals something about your character, reveals something about your identity when you put stuff. And so, man, yeah, when you write stuff, like it is who you are out of the abundance of your heart, you post on social media. Recently, we've seen powerful figures in the political sphere that have needed to delete tweets because they posted something that had, and they didn't think through the impact that that post would have. And so, like, you hear days later, they delete that tweet and it takes over, social media, and everyone's talking about this feud that's happening, this emotional outburst that showed up on the tweet, and they later deleted it. And that's why we highlight in these conversations, in these podcast episodes, we highlight the importance of character and having strength of character, being able to control your emotions, because yeah, when you're creating content, that content reflects what's happening inside of you. And another thing that I want to highlight is employers these days check out your content, and they
Yeah, they
will
do.
not hire you based on the
Absolutely.
content that you've put out there, because they're getting a glimpse into your character. They're getting a glimpse into your identity. And if you put some stuff out there that's, not super professional, then they don't necessarily want to be connected to that. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal. We need to be thinking about what we're putting. But I think even more importantly, we just need to live lives that have have a lot of integrity and character.
You no longer need a big title to be considered a
Yeah.
leader because
Yeah.
of content. The stuff you put out on social media, people see. That
Yep.
becomes people start building an identity for you based on that. And that's not their fault.
No, that's
How does content democratize leadership and make it more accessible to everybody?
Because of the ubiquity of being online and the internet, like the internet has democratized just access and leadership in ways that we've not been able to do before. So these days you don't need permission, right? The internet has made it easier for anyone to be a writer, a creator, a filmmaker, a photographer. Like anyone can be a model these days. You know what I mean? Anyone can just put their content out there and show their stuff. Years ago, 20 years ago, it was a matter of money and equipment and permission. You couldn't write an article unless you had a publisher, that or a book unless you had a publisher. You weren't a model unless a modeling agency said you were. You weren't a recording artist unless a record label would record your stuff and pay for your stuff. But these days, you can do all of that with your phone. You make all kinds of content simply with your phone. And so you don't need permission these days. Everyone has the equipment. Like you can make content and you can influence. And here's the deal, even if just one person sees it and one person changes their mind, you've influenced. You're leading even just one.
Can you give me an example of content creators that you admire who exemplify the moral and ethical leadership through their content?
Content creators who exemplify leadership through their content. I mean, all the authors that we, talk about here, John Maxwell, you can find their stuff. In recent years, Craig Groeschel's written some stuff.
Right.
Carey Nieuwhof has written some stuff. Like there's so many people that talk about leadership and create content and put it out there into the world. I mean, just pretty much any author that you can think of. This is what I do. Before I buy the book, I look for a YouTube video of that author because what they do is they make the rounds, they make the podcast rounds, they talk about their book, and then I get to hear the author talk about their book before I buy it. And so I'll do that these days, but there's yeah, man, a lot of authors, a lot of people writing about leadership, you can find videos and content that they've created.
How has the act of content creation helped you grow personally as a leader?
The prime example is this podcast. This is not something that I wanted to do. This is not something that I thought was important. And you pushed me to create this content and to record these videos. And I remember when you were like, I got these 50 lessons, and you goes, let's record every single one of them. And I thought,
Yep.
why? And I didn't want to, but you pushed me to do it and you encouraged me to do it. And this has opened up an avenue for me, not just to share leadership lessons, not to just have conversations with you, which I thoroughly enjoy, but it's also opened up this content creation podcasting avenue that I've done before, but now I'm doing it regularly. And it all is because we're creating this content of things that I've written years ago. And again, like we put it out there and I've had people watch it and I've had wonderful conversations with people talking about the content that we're creating. And so, yeah, man, just creating the Identity and Influence podcast has really helped open up this avenue for me. And we continue to influence people because of it, right? And it's not always that easy. It takes a lot of work on the front end to do this, but I think it's opening up some opportunities for us that we would not had, had we not made these videos.
And so glad that we have these
Yeah.
conversations. I'm glad that we talk about leadership. I'm glad
Yeah.
that we talk about identity and relationships. And
Yeah.
so there are people out there that are just like me or you, and we didn't want to put our stuff out there. Because
Yeah.
once you put your stuff out there, you're going to have haters. You're going to have people that don't agree with you. I know
Right.
because I don't agree with some people. And I know there's a lot of people that don't agree with me. I get some of those letters as well.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to start sharing their ideas, but they feel unqualified, they feel nervous, they're wondering how it's going to be received?
I mean, these days, a lot of people are on Instagram, Facebook, they're making videos. People are already making content. The advice that I would give to someone who wants to start sharing their ideas and feels unqualified is, well, a lot of these episodes, we talk about strength of character, we talk about identity, we talk about what's happening on the inside. Ask yourself, why do you feel unqualified? Why are you nervous? The answer to that is gonna reveal a lot of things, and once you figure out why you feel unqualified or why you feel nervous, then just get qualified. Do the work to qualify yourself to make these videos, right? To make content. Like, go to school, get the training. There are so many content creation programs, and there are so many things that you can find on YouTube that are free that will help you work through your being nervous or feeling unqualified. And then just start creating. And if you can't, get some coaching to help you start that work. Here at Rising Tide Leadership, hire one of us. We can help you and we can coach you be a better leader and be a better influencer. Like, you can get the help to do that. There are more than enough programs to help you start.
What's one action step that somebody can do today? They're listening and they want to start leading through content creation. What can they do?
Those of you that are watching right now, you're already consuming content. One of the ways that you can lead is to like, to share, to comment, and subscribe to this video. Your comment, even making a comment, is creating something. And so, I mean, the algorithm picks it up. So leave a comment, positive, negative, it doesn't really matter to us because the comment like helps. And if you want to start somewhere, just start leaving comments on the things that you're consuming. You're
Yeah.
already watching videos, you're already looking on Instagram and scrolling through social media. Why don't you just make a comment? That's one easy way to start creating content, and maybe somebody else will see it, but it gets you into the rhythm of like, okay, I'm going to leave a comment, I'm going to like this, I'm going to share this, okay, I'm going to subscribe to different things. So just start small, and then once you get comfortable doing that, then put yourself out there. The reason why you put yourself out there is because you've tapped into your passion, you've tapped into something, and then you just have to share it. So there's a lot of internal work that goes into sharing stuff and creating content, but you could start by just simply leaving a content about the content that you're watching, or just even like, sharing, and subscribing to things.
Man, I think you stole my ending thunder because I'm just going to say, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.
Yeah,
Leave us a
yeah,
comment, good, bad, or ugly. We like all of them.
yeah.
We respond to all of them. And let's get to the next part of this leadership journey together. We've got a Rising Tide newsletter. It's free. It'll make you sound like a leadership genius. You don't even got to give us credit. Just sign up for the newsletter today. We'll see you next. Dr. Lem, thanks.
Thank you.